One of Paul Gauguin's famous paintings carries the title, "Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?" Today's sermon, as you know, will be my last as minister here. I'll spend most of my time on the first two questions. As interfaithers, as a living interfaith congregation, where do we come from? What are we? And we shall close with a few words about where we are going. I should, however, warn you that we've been together nearly 10 years. And some of what I'll say may sound very familiar to some of us. I'll ask you to bear with me. Today is a day for pulling things together, or at least to make a valiant effort to pull things together. Where do we come from? We come from a fractured humanity. That's the truth of it. We need to own it. We humans have a propensity for division. We divide ourselves into competing tribes of them and us. And all too often we then subdivide our tribes into factions of them and us. And underlying this, I believe, is fear. Fear of other. So where does that fear come from? It might be from what many have called our reptilian brain. Fear as primal insecurity. If I let you in the door, will you take over my house? If I value your worth, what worth do I have? That fear of other is universal. And every one of our spiritual traditions has tried to wean us from it. In John 15, Jesus says, well, not literally, because Jesus didn't speak English. But in translation, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." In John 13, Jesus calls it a new commandment I give you. But it wasn't all that new. In Jewish scripture, in Leviticus, we are told, love your neighbor as yourself. And lest we define neighbor as the people just like us next door, a bit later in Leviticus we are told, when a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. The stranger who sojourns with you shall be to you as a native among you. And you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Okay, then, is this a Christian and Jewish thing? No. From the Sikhs, let all mankind be thy sect. From the Quran of Islam, O humanity, we created you from a single pair of male and female and made you into nations and tribes, that you might know one another. Nations and tribes so that we might know one another, not that we might fight and despise each other. From the Hindus, what sort of religion can it be without compassion? You need to show compassion to all living things. Compassion is the root of all religious faiths. From the Baha'i, O contending peoples and kindreds of the earth, set your faces toward unity. Let the radiance of its light shine upon you. From the Jains, consider the family of humankind one. From the Shinto, all ye under heaven regard heaven as your father, earth as your mother, and all things as your brothers and sisters. I could go on, but let me close this part of our discussion with something that sounds so very much like what we heard in Leviticus, except that it comes from China and the Tao Te Ching. Love the world as your own self. Then you can truly care for all things. So it isn't that our spiritual traditions haven't reached out to us. It's that after several thousand years, we still aren't listening. There are times when I imagine God just losing it. Taking us by the lapels if we're wearing shirts and by the scruff of our necks if we aren't. And screaming, I've reached out to you through the Tao. I reached out to you through Moses, through Jesus, through Muhammad, through the Buddha, through Black Elk, through Baha'u'llah, through Guru Nanak, and so many others. I've reached out to you wherever you lived. Whatever your culture, whatever your spiritual tradition, when does it sink in? Love each other. For crying out loud, love each other. Nor is interfaith ministry all that new. Recall, as but two examples, Jesus' ministry to the Samaritans and Gandhi's to Muslims as well as Hindus. Yet for so many of us, we are content to stand at the bottom of our sacred mountain, throwing rocks at each other over whose path to the mountaintop is the one true path. We would rather argue and fight than walk the path of love that all of us are called to. This is the world we come from. What are we? We are interfaithers. Okay, what does that mean? It means that we embrace as a foundational article of faith that all of our paths can lead us to the mountaintop of unbounded love. Consider, we wish to build a house. Let's say that for some reason we work best with a hammer, but are a klutz with a screwdriver and a saw. Yet others work better with a saw, and still others better with a screwdriver. So who are our true comrades? Is it others who, like us, work best with a hammer, but unlike us, wish to build casinos, or luxury palaces, or perhaps just like to use a hammer to smash things? Or is our true commonality with those who, regardless of what tool they wield, wish to build homes for those who need shelter? Should all those who use hammers stay in one house? Should our tool define who we are? Should we be content to argue that those who use other tools, however well-intentioned, are at best just fooling themselves, and at worst are a danger to society? I deeply believe that the issue shouldn't be which tool is best for building. Let us acknowledge that there are many different tools that may be used to build. Shouldn't the question be, what are we building with whatever tools we use? As interfaithers, we seek to honor the light force of the universe by building together and respecting, with wonder and not a little awe, how completely different tools, our diverse spiritual paths, how completely different tools can work together to fashion a more loving world. Interfaith, a new spiritual house based on a foundation of mutual respect and inclusivity. We come together, neither to convert nor convince, but to celebrate and to share our differing paths to love. From time to time, I've been asked, how can you as a practicing Jew, be a practicing Jew, and yet say your faith is interfaith? My answer is, how can I not? How can I recognize the terror of slavery and celebrate Israel's freedom from Egypt and not recognize that slavery has always been a depraved and horrific twisting of our human relationship? How can I celebrate Passover without wanting and working for a universal Passover when none shall be a slave? How can I recognize the horrors of my temple being destroyed and the children of Israel being forbidden to practice their religion and not recognize that defacing and destroying anyone's house of worship is a depraved and horrific twisting of our human relationship? How can I celebrate Hanukkah without wanting and working for a universal Hanukkah when we shall all be able to worship in peace and in safety, and none shall be afraid? And so, as a Jew, I embrace interfaith as a faith, while remaining Jewish. Just as you, as a Christian or Buddhist or Muslim or Baha'i or pagan, embrace interfaith while remaining on your own spiritual path. It is embracing our diversity that helps to make us whole. Let us then open ourselves to what interfaith as our faith can mean. The vistas, the love, the respect, the community that opens up to us when we see interfaith not as mutual tolerance, but mutual respect. A realization that we are one family, the human family, and we are determined not to be divided. This is who we are. This is what we are. And it fills my heart with joy. So, a few words about where we are going, beginning with a caution. Every reform movement in the history of human religion has died, or at best been dramatically sidetracked as it transitioned from reform to orthodoxy. If the dramatic reforms of interfaith, the mutual respect of our diverse spiritual paths, as we each seek to live lives of love, compassion, and community, if these reforms are to be lasting, we must guard ourselves from orthodoxy. The faith of interfaith does not demand that we always agree, but it does demand that we embrace our common humanity, that we celebrate, not fear, the diversity of our brothers and sisters. There is no one right way to live a life of love. There is only the living of that life. There's no right way to live lives of compassion, justice, and community. There is only the living of those lives. Orthodoxy forms chains that would bind us. Stay free. Live justly, compassionately, and with love. That is living interfaith. In sum, let us love each other. In times of trial and times of joy, in times of wonder and times of overwhelming stress, let us love one another. You need not remember me, but never forget us. We are a family, one family, the human family. Let us love one another. May we never lose sight of the splendor of our diversity. May we never forget that we are simply differing feathers on the same peacock. To live is to choose. Let us choose love, compassion, justice, community. And may we choose to walk humbly with that which we hold sacred. Let this be who and what we are, now and always. And so for the final question, where are we going? The truth is, I don't know. I don't know. It's not up to me. It's up to you. Your love, your hard work, your commitment, your faith. Where are we going? It's your call. But know this. Know this. I love you. I love each of you. And I have every confidence in where we are going.